back in, finishing that thought. One thing I've learned working in the organizational development community is if you're going to teach a workshop, you better have a buffer activity at the very beginning while people trickle in. Okay, so again, welcome to accelerated decision making. I asked you to come up with different modes of decision making, right? Different ways that people actually make decisions. So let's do a little bit of popcorn debrief on that. So if you've got something, go ahead and call it out. So what were some of your ideas? How do people make decisions? Consensus, all right. What else?
Majority rule.
Okay, majority rule. What else?
Top down. Well, I guess that's, top down. Sorry, I don't know where my head is.
Okay, top down.
Inductive and deductive reasoning.
Okay, so inductive and deductive.
Gradients of agreement.
Nice, okay, inductive, deductive.
Compromise.
Compromise, okay.
Not deciding.
Not deciding at all, so that's sort of like the null state, not actually deciding.
Come up with that.
Force ranking.
I haven't even got gradients of agreement yet. All right, so we've got gradients of agreement.
Impulsive.
And then there was,
Reactive.
Antonio, what was your other one?
Force ranking.
Force ranking. Okay, so force rank, and then what else?
Impulsive.
Impulsive, okay.
Pros and cons.
Impulsive, let me get that.
Intuitive.
Intuitive, pros and cons.
Inclusive.
Inclusive, okay. Force field.
Random. Varying structure, 25-10.
25-10, learning structures, okay, 25-10. That is a decision making. I missed a couple. What were they? Emotional, okay. Yeah, why not? What else? Rapid? Okay, so actually using the rapid methodology. Yep, rapid.
I said to please a person in power or influence.
Okay, so influence. Good one. Let's do that one right about here. Influence.
Fallback?
What's fallback? I don't know that
Like
one.
when consensus is reached, it falls back to the leader to make the decision.
Leader decides. Okay, so fallback or leader decides.
How about the loudest person in the room?
The loudest person in the room.
They're the loudest.
Now, is it so from a decision-making perspective, right? Is there a decision there, or are they just taking up airspace?
They force the
They
decision.
force the decision.
They might force the decision. Okay, in that one, let's say it's, loud voice. Sure.
What about to avoid a negative
What
outcome?
about decision support, and it's a hierarchy?
Tell me about like a hierarchy. Tell me more about
like
that.
a recommendation and a consensus, and then the decision is made.
Okay, so we've got decision support. You've got hierarchy. Hierarchy. So are they, again, that's who's in the room. My question is, how does the decision making get made? Are they actually making a decision, or is it more like a town hall?
The decision is what they say, like, I want to engage the community, what do they want? I go with what they want.
I go with what they want. Okay, I think that might be somewhere in around here. So let me put community in.
Arbitrary.
Arbitrary, okay. So again, the question is like, who's doing it though? One person? Huh? One person, all right, arbitrary. All right,
Command and control.
nice, so let's put command and control.
Elimination.
What was that other one?
Elimination.
Wait, say again?
Elimination.
Tell me more.
You have three options. Let's eliminate the two that we think that are less.
Elimination.
What we need, and go with the third one.
So that would be same thing as like doing a pro-con list or a force field diagram, okay? I think I heard somebody else. Lesser of two evils. Okay.
What about avoiding a negative outcome?
Avoiding
Like,
negative
trying to
outcome.
avoid an outcome.
Okay, so avoid negative outcome.
Random.
Yeah, you could do a totally random one.
Experiment.
You could experiment. You could roll the dice. All right, I think we're getting there. Now, let me just say thank you for this. I think we've got a pretty good critical mass of the complexity of different decisions that are there. Okay. Now, I noticed that the two copies of the fifth discipline that I brought in for the swap both got taken. So here's one of the things. If you didn't get it, here's what you missed. It's inside the fifth discipline. What Peter Senge talks about in the context of decision making is that there's basically 4 different ways you can make a decision. And I think everything that you named falls into those 4 categories. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, and then 4. There's all this other one over here. Okay. So the first one, by the way, there are not going to be any PowerPoints. If any of you have like PowerPoint withdrawal, let me know. I can set you up on the computer. But good news, if you are a natural note taker, if you're like me and you learn through taking notes, just feel free to follow along and do the same stuff I do. By the way, at the end of this, I'm going to scan this and I'll give you a copy of all of this stuff.
Thank you.
I just need it. You're welcome. You just need to. I need to get your email somehow. And Claire, raise your hand, Claire. Thank you. Is going to help me with that. As long as I can get your emails, I will send you a copy of this. 4 different modes of decision making, according to Peter Senge in the 5th discipline. He says that the first kind is a tell. Somebody tell me what a tell is. What's a tell kind of decision?
This is what we're going to do.
We're doing it, right? Wow, Karen, you were like,
That's it.
this is, oh wow. Did it? Can you like stand up and do that again? I mean, that was amazing because you did this little thing with your head that was like perfect.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah. That's a tell. So the purpose of a tell, of course, is to inform or to direct.
Brian, can you do it again? Because
Can you do it again? The purpose of a tell is to inform and direct. Now, by the way, it's really easy for us as OD practitioners to take a look at this and say, like, well, I don't like this stuff. You need this, okay?
Yeah.
This is not a valuative model. It is not to say that one is better than another. If you are teaching me something like CPR, I don't want you to say, well, Brian, how many chest compressions do you think you need to do? I want you to tell me, okay? So depending on what's happening in the room, be choiceful about which of these modes you actually decide on. The purpose of a tell is to inform or direct, okay? Then there is a sell. Now, a sell was actually invoked earlier today when I think it was Leslie that brought up Simon Sinek, right? If you've seen the Golden Circle, if you've seen Start With Why, that's everything that he's talking about. The purpose of a sell is to influence, oh, it's already there, or to, let me see if we can do this, motivate. Okay? I want you to get on the bus with me. I don't necessarily have any control over you, but I want you to join me on this. This is a good idea. I'm going to sell you on the reasons why. Now, a lot of people look at sell and they think, well, I'm not a salesman. Yeah, you are. Right. Any time you have tried to influence somebody, you're trying to do that. And I think, especially inside,
They really love it.
I know how to sell. You got it. Okay, so some of you are like, I got that. That's great. I also think a lot of us who are in the field of organizational development, we find ourselves in this mode a lot, right? You really should listen to what your employees have to say. You know, you should not just barrel forward this thing. We talked earlier today about the need to bring in the human element, okay? I don't know why we have to keep making that argument again and again and again. But it's like, yeah, no, you know, your organization is basically fundamentally people. So anytime we go down that path of saying, here's why OD and all of the practices behind it are important, we're selling, okay? So the next kind is what's called a consult, okay? And this is exactly like, let's see, who said decision support? Where'd that come from?
Me.
Yeah, you're amazing. So decision support, that's what we're talking about. So a hierarchy. Now in government, and we are in the DC area, I think that this is about 90% of the way that decisions get made in government. The purpose of a consult is to provide advice and feedback. Okay? So in this model, I'm the boss. I've decided what I want to do. I've got my vision, but it's at the 10,000 foot level. I'm going to bring in my direct reports, my people underneath me. I'm going to say, hey, you're at the 1,000 foot level, or you're on the ground floor. Tell me, what am I missing? What are the gaps? What feedback and advice do you have for me? I'm still going to decide, but I want to hear, let's go around the room. This is the way that a cabinet works, okay? So the president's got his cabinet, they all give advice, the cabinet, or the president ultimately decides. That's the way that this works. Now, I think that about 90% of the way that decisions get made in government are in this model. The thing is that most organizations don't necessarily want to admit to this, right? That's how they get made, but that's not how they want to admit to it. that brings us to the last one, which is all about compromise and majority rule and gradients of agreement, inclusive, and this is about co-create. So we are going to co-create our ideas. Now here's what this means. Let me pull this out just a little bit. Again, I'll give you a copy of this. That's consult, and then we get to co-create. All right. So here is the metaphor for co-creation. When we were talking about co-creation, fundamentally we were starting on, well, first of all, we all have equal seats at the table. So as equals, we all have a voice, we all have a seat, and we are all ultimately responsible for first brainstorming ideas. We're going to diverge, we're going to brainstorm ideas. We are responsible for coming up with the criteria with which we're going to rack and stack those ideas and say this one is better than that one. And we are also all ultimately responsible for closing on those ideas or ultimately making some sort of decision as a result. So this is about participatory decision making. So when you were telling me things about like compromise, gradients of agreement, inductive versus deductive, forced rank, all of these group decision making functions, that's what we're talking about here with co-creating a decision. Now, what happens when you get a client or a leader or a boss who says something like this? Hey, Phil, I'm a co-creative kind of guy. That's the kind of decision I want. So you set that meeting up for me, right? You set up that process for me. And we all go into the room, right? And they all start jamming on ideas and coming up with different things that we could do. And then they start closing and say, you know what? We really should do this. We should move everything over to AI, or we should like push everything onto the cloud, or we should outsource HR. And the boss is doing this. Right? So what is going on there? You've got somebody who said, I want a co-creative decision, but then you look at them and they're getting really friendly in the room. So what's happening there?
It's afraid to make a decision.
It's afraid to make a decision. What else?
Afraid of losing control.
He's afraid of losing control. What else?
He doesn't like them.
He doesn't like where this is going. Yeah. He's taking his hands off the wheel of the decision making, right? And yet he doesn't like the output in terms of where this is going. All right, so here, if there's one thing that you take away from this workshop, here's what it is. I think that fundamentally the most important thing that teams do is make decisions. And yet almost none of them are explicit about how they actually make those decisions. And so when you have somebody who says, well, I want to have this co-creative sort of experience, I want this to be participatory, I want everybody to have a voice, you say, okay, what happens if this group decides something and you don't like it? Because that could happen. If you set this up in a way and you do something that's inclusive, majority, well, all of a sudden if we're doing majority rule, somebody could get outvoted. Let's do a test of that. Let me borrow one of these things. So everybody grab a paddle, okay? I've decided to treat everybody for dinner tonight. You're coming with me, okay? And what I've decided is that we are going to my favorite restaurant, Taco Bell. So who's in it? Okay, that's a lot of red. That's a lot of thumbs down. There you go. Now, I did not get my way. I love Taco Bell too. We can geek out.
Yes.
I did not get my way, right? So if we're really serious about majority rule or pros and cons, or inclusive decision making, that means that the leader may not necessarily get their way. And so if you're faced with somebody like that, and I'm talking about before you get into the meeting, if you're in discovery, if you're in the design for this offsite or whatever it is, how do you manage something like that? You're getting the sense that this person may not feel so good about, the outcome if it really is participatory. What do you think?
Normally, you have the pre-meeting to the meeting.
Right.
Make certain you start coaching and understanding what their concerns are and start trying to eliminate them ahead of time so that when you get to the meeting, you get the result you want.
Mm-hmm.
Term for that?
So I like to call it discovery, but that's the meeting before the meeting to do a little bit of priming. What else could you do? Yeah, go ahead.
Come up with like guiding principles or guidelines. So are there like any non-negotiables that we need to work within?
Mm-hmm.
Budget or timeline or anything that the decision needs to be contained with.
Right. So what are the constraints then?
Yeah.
Right. So okay, we can have blue sky thinking, but we can't spend more than $1 million. right? Or we've got to get whatever we're going to do, it's got to be done within 6 months or whatever that is. So you put some constraints on that. Yeah, what else?
So I think the leader could manage expectations ahead of time, because they don't always know what's gonna result from this co-creation process.
Right.
So having sort of right of refusal, so to speak, and putting that out in advance would also be helpful to people not feeling deflated by all this energy that we have provided to give these options, and now the leader doesn't go with any of them.
Right, so setting the tone, putting some constraints out there, that's what's called psychological priming. Okay, and those of you that are familiar with it, it's the idea that, yeah, Jeremy, you got something?
Yeah, so this seems to sound intuitive, but
Uh-huh.
when I first started my career, it wasn't to me. The leader needs to actually be part of the conversation every time.
Yeah.
Right? And I had like a director of a health department who farmed it out to HR. We got 10 months down the road, gave a great presentation to change culture, and he goes, I love what you guys did, but what we're gonna do is
Yeah.
move on, right? And so, my learning is like, you don't get to say, I'm farming this out to the person who reports to me. You have to be part of the change.
So to Jeremy's point, when I find myself with a leader like that I think they're getting a little bit frinkly about the results of a participatory outcome. You know, frinkly is like wrinkly and frowny at the same time. That's what that is. You see that, right? It's, you know, you got in their body language. They get all like all twisted up. You know, like rigor mortis sets in with folks like that. So if they're getting all frinkly about the results of a participatory decision making, you say, "Sir, ma'am, I get where you're coming from. This may not be a co-create kind of meeting. This could easily be a consult kind of meeting." And when you explain it to them that way, say, look, you still get to make the decision. You get to get the best ideas, and what that means is that everybody in the room is off the hook for making the decision that's there. So they can just go wild with it. You'll get the best ideas, and then later, sir, ma'am, you can apply reality. You can decide what happens. And so I find when I share that model with my clients, if they're not completely bought into a participatory decision-making process, we go back to then the consult. They're happy with it. We can set it up properly with the people who are in the room. And quite frankly, that makes my job that much easier because I don't have to snap anybody to a hard line at the end of it. All right, I want to talk about, Adriana, did you have something before I move on? Okay. I want to talk about what are the 4 pillars of red teaming. Okay?
Of what?
Red teaming.
Oh, red teaming.
This stuff. Okay? If you read the course description for this thing, that's what the foundation of this is. So the cool thing about red teaming is that I actually found it to be really, really kind of neat. You know, when I saw what they were doing, I was like, "Oh, this is OD and facilitation," and it was kind of neat finding that in the Command and General Staff College in the middle of Fort Leavenworth, right? I mean, I did not expect to find it here. Here are the 4 pillars as they describe it. So the first one is culture. This is having an understanding of culture. Now, I am not going to tell a group of organizational development practitioners the best way to do this. You guys have more tools on this one than I do. But the first one is really understanding the culture that you're getting into before you do this. The next one is about self. Having a real awareness of self. I have a colleague, she's teaching next door. She likes to say that this work is self-work. I could not agree more. You cannot go into the room and pretend to facilitate, coach, work with people unless you have a real good understanding of self first. The next pillar, in terms of the model, the way that they say it is, they call it groupthink. And they don't stop there, but groupthink mitigation. Now, the big thing that they're concerned about in the Army is the general saying, well, we're going to do this. And everybody underneath the general saying, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Right? Because that's a way that you can really get into trouble. So what a red teamer is trained to do is to go in and help the people that are in the room tell the general that maybe that's not such a good idea. Okay? So when we're talking about groupthink mitigation, this is avoiding the yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Okay? And then finally, the last part is applied critical thinking. Okay? So we're just going to do a light touch on each one of these pillars, given the amount of time that we've got. First one I would like to do is actually to start with self. Okay? So if you don't mind, find your way to an index card, or if you like, you can just memorize this. So I want you to write down the top 5 events that shaped your life, that led you to where you are. Top 5 events. If that's too much, you can do 3. But once you get rolling, I'm sure you'll get there.
Okay.
So top 5 events that shaped your life. The time is yours.
Put something in the register. So sorry.
No, you're fine.
5 events that shaped your life, right?
5 events that shaped your life. Top 5.
I never realized this till you asked the question, but this is my speech that I give. Apparently it's built around the 5 events that shaped my life.
I had no idea.
By the way, those of you that are taking this sort of like as a trainer, if you want to go and use this stuff, this particular modality is called Who Am I? Okay. It is featured in the Red Team Handbook, and the Red Team Handbook is available for free. All you got to do is Google it, and there's a PDF that you can download.
I feel like I'm getting, because you know the red team is like who stops a story before it goes bad,
Yeah,
right? And so I'm getting hung up on,
that's one of the modalities. That's called Devil's Advocate.
I know, I'm just saying, it's the phrase that's hanging me up. I'm actually thinking of like the newsroom.
There's like 10 different definitions. There's also like have you ever seen the movie Sneakers where they like bust into somebody's facility or whatever? That's
I
also
have
Red
not,
Team.
but now I'm going to.
It's got Robert Redford and oddly Dan Aykroyd.
I remember that movie.
Yeah, that's Red Team.
Sneakers, okay.
The cybersecurity guys use red teaming. They use that a lot. But everybody's like, oh, we invented that. Okay. Okay, no matter where you are, you don't have to have 5, but here's what I'd like you to do. Turn to someone sitting next to you. It need not be the same people you just worked with. Share a couple of your top 5 events. So turn to the person sitting next to you. Share a couple of your events. Go ahead.
So many events. I think it's first
up that last thought. Coming back in. Okay, just for the sake of time, we are not going to debrief this one, but I do want to hear, going up to the balcony, how did it go? How did that conversation go? Good. What was good about it? What was good about it? You said it. I heard it. Huh? There's a discovery that happened. What else? How did it go?
We got familiarity, we've had a lot of things in common.
You have some things in common. What else?
That was what I was gonna say, learning like the things we have in common.
Finding some things you have in common. Okay, so again, I'm just going to do a light touch on this. There's a whole bunch under this pillar around self-awareness. This is a quick one that you can get people to do, and it doesn't take that much. I'm going to do one cultural move, okay? This is one cultural move. It's called the 4 Ways of Seeing. Does anybody know this one?
Nope.
Yeah, you do. Okay. Where have you heard this one before?
I read the book that you just talked about.
Amazing. Okay, there you go. So 4 ways of seeing. So what it is that you do this one when you're trying to get like specifically 2 stakeholder groups to understand each other a little bit better, or really where you want to understand those 2 stakeholder groups. Okay. Now I had a whole list. I was going to have you vote for it, but I'll share the list. I was going to do Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. I was thinking about John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev. I decided to go with Al Capone and Elliot Ness. Okay? So here's how we're going to do this. So just call it out. So you name some attributes, and I'll write it down. You do a quad chart. We're OD practitioners. We love quad charts.
Okay, hold on. What's a quad chart?
It's 2 by 2. Okay,
Oh,
so
got
2
it.
cells.
Okay. Sorry.
2 cells. All right. We're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. How does Al Capone see Al Capone? What is his sense of self? Name some attributes. How does he see himself? Success, power, tough,
The end all be all.
end all be all. What else?
The enforcer.
Untouchable.
Untouchable. Well, wait a minute now.
This damn Trump.
I'm sorry.
That was the other guy. What is it? Yeah. Okay, so how did he see himself? So think about it. You're Al Capone, right? You're working outside the law. What else?
You're the boss.
Baller. Okay. How else? What was his job? Like, what was he doing?
You're the boss.
Yep.
Killer.
He's a killer. Okay. Did he see himself as a killer? Probably not. Justice. Honor. Protector. Right? And at the end of the day, he was a bootlegger. Right? I'm just giving people some happiness. You're really getting inside this person's head here. Yeah, go ahead.
Alright, this is an aside, is this like the Johari window?
Not exactly,
Oh, okay.
but you're close.
Oh, okay.
A Johari window is intended for an individual.
Right, okay.
This is where you bring 2 parties together and you see how they see each other.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
this is like, think of this as a 2-party Johari window. You're right on. Okay.
Okay.
So that's how Al Capone sees himself. I'm just trying to bring. In fact, this is a quote. I was just trying to bring people a good time. Okay. How does Elliot Ness, the untouchable? How does Elliot Ness see Elliot Ness? How does he see himself?
Just the hero.
Hero, justice. What else? Persistent, righteous, absolutely. Persistent,
Enforcer, I guess, maybe.
righteous, enforcer. Okay, good enough. How does Elliot Ness see Al Capone? Criminal, okay? Criminal, what else? Evil,
Taking advantage of people.
disruptor, taking advantage of people, opponent,
Menace.
menace,
Loser.
loser, all right, menace. And Al, this may be the hard part. How does Al see Elliot? How does Al Capone see
As
Elliot?
a nemesis?
Nemesis? Ooh, love that word. What else?
The enemy.
Pain.
In the ass.
Nemesis. Pain.
That's nemesis in English.
Enemy.
I'm just sorry.
Now, like, so and keep in mind, so Al Capone, he was completely justified in his own mind. I'm just trying to give people a hard time. Okay? So when you adopt that mindset, right, really empathize with him for a second now, and I know it's hard because this guy went to like Alcatraz, but how would he see Elliot Ness? If he really saw himself, I'm a businessman, right? I'm somebody who's just trying to provide people a good time. This is about the government. Huh?
Wrong.
Oppressor. Awesome. Okay?
Good observation.
That's it.
What else?
Rule follower.
Rule follower, he's a stickler, right?
Goody two shoes.
Goody two shoes. All right.
It's like capitalism.
Capitalism, right? He's a shill of the system. Okay. All right. So this one is the 4 ways of seeing. This is just a light touch on this. But if your goal is to build empathy in other stakeholders, this is a great way to do it. What's going on?
So Brian, using that one, would in a room full of people who are either the owls or the Elliots,
Yeah.
how do you have the dialogue safely?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, because I need to use this.
This is going to be what? You want to see some facilitation? Here it comes. Ready? How would you use this in a room? There it was. So really, how might you use this in a room full of people?
I would actually ask each group to do this individually. I would compile the list, and then I will show the final list, and then ask one person of each group talking for some time, and encourage individual.
Yeah. So playing around with the participant mix, starting in groups, maybe starting in like groups. So I'm going to have all the Elliots over here. I'm going to have all the Owls over there, and then maybe I'll mix them up later, and we'll do a max mix. You got a hand up?
Yeah, I would have done them and then have people just share theirs with other people.
Just share them out. Yeah.
Share them out.
Yeah. So you could think of this as another way of thinking about this is to say this is a view from our world, and then you could do a little bit of a head fake and you say, okay, imagine that you were that group. How might they say you? Now, anytime you do a modality, this is just me. You can do this however you want to. Anytime you do a modality that has the risk of being a little bit sensitive, I like to give them an easy example, like this one, so that they can wrap their head around actually how the modality works.
And that it's normal.
It's normalized.
It's not personalized to them.
Exactly, and then they can actually use it. I don't say go ahead and just use this on yourself right away. It's like, well, you don't have that objective distance.
I would also like do, if you have time, like this, a version of the self-activity or who am I first, to
Yep.
do some like initial humanization and trust building.
It builds.
Yeah.
It builds. Okay.
Right, I've used it with different groups, like 3 groups or 4 groups. And I have done what I just told you for each group with each other.
Right.
So that was multi-stakeholder exercise. It was really interesting.
That is really, really cool.
Provide evidence.
So it does get it gets a little bit wonky
Yes.
if you have to do more than 2
Right.
groups. But yeah, you can totally do that. Yeah, go ahead.
Just for kicks and giggles, can you say again the others that you were thinking about bringing to us besides
Sure.
Al?
Yeah, so I was thinking about, I like to do examples from history because I'm kind of a history nerd, but I was going to do Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. I was going to do, I didn't mention this one before, Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison.
Oh, that would have been nice.
All right, okay, now you're making me feel better. The other one was John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev. Now, you could do sports, but I find that sports either works or doesn't.
Characters and stuff.
You could.
Oh, okay.
The trick is that you got to find something like everybody in the room
Yeah, that
would
everybody
know.
knows.
You know?
I was just thinking, I was wondering like Gen Z, and I wasn't even sure about millennials. If they would know Elliot Ness alcohol.
I would
This is who we want to talk to about that.
All right, so we have covered culture. We've done just a light touch on culture. We've done just a light touch on self. Now we're going to really get into the core of things, which is groupthink, mitigation, and then applied critical thinking. Now, our language for this, we can use divergent thinking and convergent thinking. It's exactly the same stuff. Now, I'm going to ask you to repeat some of the things that you mentioned to me before, and so let me slide this back a little bit. Let's assume for a second that we have decided to be more on the co-creative side of things, okay? So we've decided that our decision-making mode is going to be here. Now, what is the problem with co-creative participatory decision-making? Takes too long. Why does it take too long?
You gotta get everyone to talk.
You got to get everyone to talk. Why else?
You gotta get them to stop talking.
You got to get them to stop talking.
Get somebody to make a decision.
You got to have somebody make a decision, right? Here's the thing. So if
Get them to understand each other.
going back to the model of divergence, have you ever been in the kind of meeting where all of a sudden we start brainstorming ideas, we start coming up with stuff, and then all of a sudden the leader's like, okay, I've heard all this, and we're going to do that idea right there, okay? What happens to everybody else that was just jamming on ideas? They get deflated. They're like, what the heck? I was just jamming on ideas, and it's like, hey, we're doing this. So that's akin to that leader that I was trying to talk about, where they're like, well, I want to hear everybody's ideas, but then I'm going to go back to tell and do my own thing. That's a consult, right? Sometimes you see that. I do a lot of work with government. I see the opposite of that, which is we start talking, and we keep talking, and we keep talking, and we keep talking, and time ends, and we're like, what did we just decide, right? So there's gotta be a turn at some point. We have got to go from jamming on ideas to actually closing on ideas. You had a question? Or a hand up? Lady in the back. No? You were stretching. Okay, all right. Nobody stretch anymore. You're not allowed to stretch. Oh, you do? Okay, go for it.
Well, an observation
Mhm.
that it's particularly disheartening and deflating when the leader already knew what he
Yeah.
wanted or she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then he goes through this whole exercise.
So back to this toxic dynamic where you say you're going to do a co-create, but you end up doing a tell like that. Okay. Back to that dynamic. I think that this is the fastest way to erode trust in an organization. To say, hey, I want everybody's ideas. I'm going to go off and do this. Right. This is one of the reasons I really don't like employee climate surveys, because people give a whole lot of ideas and then what happens? It goes into the wind. Exactly the same dynamic there. So, if you ask people for their opinion, be prepared to either act on it or explain why you're not going to act on it. Go ahead.
I just want to say there's a flip side to that, though, that is a potential culture concern, I guess. And it's when you don't ask for their opinion because you know you're not going to listen to it.
I'm not saying not ask for it. What I am saying is that if you're going to ask for it, be clear about the decision
I get
making.
what you're saying. I'm just saying, I just worked for a company for 3 years that would not do an employee survey because they knew the owner wasn't going to listen.
Well, that makes
problem, I'm not saying, by the way, it was a toxic culture to begin with. But my point in saying that is, you still have to at least have some type of input coming from employees, and if you're not doing that, then you're missing.
It depends on the culture. I think that there's a lot of organizations out there that are very happy being top-down hierarchies where there is no bottom-up information flow. I think it entirely depends on the culture. That's why I keep going back to, you've got to be explicit about the kind of decision-making that you're going to make. At least be explicit about it. If your mode is to just be in the tell mode, say this is this kind of organization, right? If you've ever been to boot camp,
Yeah.
that is a tell kind of organization, and you know that going into it, right? So I think there's an agreement between people who opt into organizations and their cultures and what they expect the decision-making mode to be. But I think that, just by extension, there's a lot of organizations who say they're co-creative when in fact there's something completely different. I think it's our job in this room to help people realize that no, this is the kind of decision-making that you make, so at least be honest about it. To that point, let's talk a little bit about the right side of the pillars that I just showed, the applied critical thinking and the groupthink mitigation. We call them divergence and convergence, okay? You already gave me some ideas. What are some ways that we could bring some ideas into the room? What are some modalities for that? Brainstorm, okay. What are the rules of brainstorming? There's 4 of them. No idea is a bad idea. What else?
A lot of ideas.
Okay, go for quantity. That's one of them. Go for quantity. What else?
Sometimes silence is okay.
That is a rule. It's not one of Alex Osborne's rules when he came up for it. Okay?
sorry.
There were 4 specific ones. Anybody else? Yeah, so no judgment. Avoiding judgment. And then the last one? Nope, the more wild the idea, the better. Okay, that was the line. When Alex Osborne invented brainstorming, that's what he came up with. Now, the thing is...
Before I get him, sorry.
Sure, so it is... we just did this.
No,
No idea is a bad idea, so no judgment. No judgment or criticism.
No judgment.
Be freewheeling, the more wild the idea, the better. Go for quantity, the more ideas, the better. And then I didn't actually say this one, which is build on the ideas of others. You want to see that? Here. Just copy it right
That's the
part.
Thank you.
Okay. So you got brainstorming. What else could you do? How else do you bring ideas into the room?
Panel,
Huh?
like expert sharing.
Sure, expert
I
panel.
said panel is what I said.
Yeah, expert panel.
That's what I'm really going on.
Okay, and
Can I piggyback on that though and
Sure.
say expert panel with a processing that comes with it?
like in what way?
Like instead of just listening to someone talk to us for an hour, we're gonna actually talk about what we heard, what questions we
Yeah,
have,
so-
and how we can apply it.
How about I say like expert panel plus reflection?
Thank you, that's
Okay.
what I was going for.
I knew you were. All right. So what else? How else do you bring ideas into the room? This is where my liberating structures people show up. Huh? Mind mapping. All right, wait, if I had like a gold star, there you go. Does anybody not know what mind mapping? Actually, let's see, so this is green if you know what a mind map is, red if you don't. Green if you know what a mind map is. Amazing, I was looking for that one person who doesn't know what a mind map is. This is for you, all right. So a mind map is a radial network diagram, that's the geeky term for it, where you start in the center, and then you branch out, and then you follow your ideas as they go, okay? And you can use it for example, brainstorming. Oh, and underneath brainstorming, we've got those 4 criteria, right, that we just talked about. Oh, and then back over here, you could do in the center, you know, and make sure while you're in the center you have a big piece of paper like this, okay? So this is a quick and dirty example of a mind map. I love mind maps. I think that they are the gateway drug to graphic facilitation. If you want to geek out on mind maps, let me know. By the way, there is a section in the Red Team Handbook about mind mapping, so you can check that out too. What else can you use to bring ideas into the room? How else might you do it?
Collaborative sharing.
Collaborative sharing? What does that mean? What does it look like?
So I'm thinking of, like, you ask each person to share with their small group, you know, things that make them proud, what their one concern is, what they want to get out of the next 3 years of working for their company, and then you kind of debrief it.
Yep.
Telling our stories is the name of the activity.
Telling our stories. So there's, again, if you choose to look up the manual, look for what's called circle of voices, okay?
Okay.
It's related to that. It's a little bit different. Here's the way that circle of voices go. I want to hear from everybody in the room. You're all going to have 60 seconds of uninterrupted time. Now, again, a group this big, we're not going to be able to do that. I would get you into small breakouts.
Yeah.
But 60 seconds uninterrupted time, in my experience, is people usually, if they're completely uninterrupted, they usually spend about 45 seconds. It's very rare that I have to cut somebody off at 60 seconds. So it's also known as a 60-second serial share, or a round robin, or a go-around. It's exactly the same thing. Circle of voices. Let me give you one other one, and I think this one is so good, especially following a presentation. I love it at the end of a presentation, like the speaker says, okay, are there any questions? And then what happens? You get crickets, because everybody in the room has been in passive receive mode. They've been watching the show, they've been eating their popcorn. It's like they're at the movies, right? They're in movie mode. So one way you can get them out of movie mode and get them more into an active participant is to do a method that's called a think, write, share. And this is, again, it's my favorite way of switching up the energy and bringing people back into active participation mode. You get 60 seconds to think about this prompt, whatever it is. No talking, sorry extroverts, no talking, no writing, sorry introverts. You just have to think about this. Then you get 60 seconds to write it down, write it on sticky notes, write it on index cards, and then you get a further 60 seconds to share, okay? This is one of the best ways I've found to snap people from the end of a presentation back into participation, okay? Any other, well, we'll call it divergent methods, any other methods to bring in ideas before we move on?
Could you collect it before, like survey people before like the meeting to get the ideas?
You could. I'm a little itchy about homework assignments. Like, people don't often do homework before the meeting. I like to save meeting time for the meeting.
Yeah.
To that point, if I've got somebody who I'm working with and they're like, well, we want to kick off this thing with 90 minutes of presentations. I'm like, well, maybe not do that. Let's save the meeting for meeting time. And instead, here's what I want you to do. If you've got a presentation, go ahead and use that neat feature in PowerPoint to record your own voice and then send this thing out as a video for people to watch in advance. But let's save the meeting for meeting time. Let's save the group time for group work. Okay? Yes, sir.
I think what I heard in that comment was a common OD thing of gathering data about the group, the ideas, and then presenting that at the in the meeting.
You could do a
Here's
data
what you
scan.
have
Yeah,
said
sure.
about yourself.
You could do a
for
data
example,
scan.
And then what does that generate?
Yeah, that's a little bit different than what I'm talking about. If you're using it in the context of an environmental scan to say, here's what's going on, that's one thing. What I'm saying is that we're in the room and we're making decisions about what do we do? What's our strategy, right? What are our initiatives? Yes, ma'am.
World Cafe.
World Cafe is another great one. Who can give me like the 10 seconds on World Cafe?
The World Cafe was created by Juanita Brown.
That's not going to take 10 seconds. That's not going to take 10 seconds.
I mean, if we're going there, whole scale change, open space.
Open space is a good one. Yep. Open space is the whole diamond, though. Open space will take you from like the divergence through the refining and the dynamic community. All right, look up World Cafe. It's in there. All right, let's move on just a little bit for the sake of time. Now then, so we've got our ideas. We have to come up with some sort of way of racking and stacking these ideas, some sort of decision making that's there. Let's see, somebody, I think it was somebody in the room said, I love SWOT analysis. Was that somebody here? Maybe he was outside. I think it was Kurt, actually. So SWOT analysis would be one of those, just to get you thinking. Against these ideas, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Now again, I know that this one is often used like writ large for an organization. You can also use it small. You can use it micro to say, well, let's take a look at these ideas. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? How else might you refine these ideas? What are some other criteria that you could use? What else?
Voting on multi.
You can vote. All right. So you can do some voting.
And you can do prioritization voting, or you
Yep.
can even do, I can't think of the right word to say, but you go through and you check the ones you most agree with.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how many you check.
So prioritization voting, you can go with you can come up with a stacked rank or a 1 to N list.
Thank you.
Where we're gonna have the one, this is what everybody wants to do, and then second, and third, and so forth, right? Ultimately, this is still a vote, though. What are your other favorite methods of voting? There's like 20 of them out there. Multi-vote, so what's a multi-vote?
Everybody gets 3 votes, put on the ones you like the best.
You
put
get,
3 of them on one choice, you can spread them out.
it's almost like I knew you were gonna say that, right? So you give people these little dot stickers.
Yes, the green red.
The green red, you can do green red if you want to.
Yeah.
I like to
green.
keep it simple and just do like, okay, here's the different dots.
Yeah.
And so if we're picking where we're gonna go eat and we've got, I don't know, KFC, Taco Bell, and Chili's, if I really wanna go to Taco Bell, I can take all 5 of my dots and put them all on Taco Bell. If I'm more ambivalent about it, you're like, why would you go to Taco Bell? I lost Adriana at Taco Bell. If you're a little more ambivalent about it, you can spread your votes out. And what that does is, it allows people to follow the energy that they have.
Could you say what you said again? I missed what you just said.
About what?
Just the last 2 sentences that you just said.
Okay, welcome to accelerated decision making. Last two. Okay.
Yes.
So with a multi-vote, there's a couple of ways you can do it. Okay. So you can do a weighted vote, which is you can distribute them however you want. Okay. So a weighted distro. If you really want to go to Taco Bell, you take your 4 sticker dots and you put them all on Taco Bell. Okay. Now that is if you want to ramp up the amount of advocacy that you're seeing in the room. Why would you want to do that? If you're sensing that you're moving more towards groupthink, if you're thinking like, I'm not really seeing the debate, the back and forth discussion that I would like to see in the room, and I want people to have the opportunity to really advocate hard for something, I want to do a weighted distribution, okay? If Karen really wants to go to Taco Bell, but she's been silent so far today, I want to be able to give her a mode to be able to do that. If, on the other hand, there's been a lot of advocacy in the room and people have been arguing with each other, another thing that you can do is to do a forced distribution, which is to say, here are your 4 dots, and you must put them in 4 different options. Here are your 4 dots, and you must put them in 4 different options. And what that does is that says, well, that gets people off of it. Well, I really wanted to go to Taco Bell, but yeah, I guess I'd be okay going to KFC. Okay? So it allows them to move off that line of advocacy and be a little bit more towards the line of inquiry. Okay? Any other options here? Yeah, go ahead.
So you could do like a matrix
Ah.
situation where you've got criteria
Yep.
across the top, and then you've got options.
You
around
just
the-
blew up my model, because here's how this goes, right? Voting is ultimately based on preference, okay? What you're doing is that you are putting the decision into the black box of people's minds, right? The limbic system, that thing that we were hearing about before, which is that fast system that CJ talked about, okay? You're really putting the entirety of the decision-making process into that like black box operating system inside people's mind. When you do something like a matrix, you apply some sort of criteria. And now you're exposing the decision to transparency, okay? So we're gonna come up with a grid of some kind, we're going to say, okay, here are our, 1, 2, 3, 4 different options. They have to meet criteria A, B, and C. This one kind of does it, this one does here, and stuff like that. And that's how we decide. Okay? And you can assign weights and all sorts of stuff like that. In the Red Team Handbook, if you decide to use it, this is called analysis of competing hypotheses. Okay? They use fancy words for everything. Analysis of competing hypotheses. You can actually use this, by the way, to figure out somebody's intent or what something might have been. All right? But the bottom line is that if you pull the criteria out into the open, all of a sudden, you don't rely on that black box of people's preference, which is up here. Now, you're going to do this, and there's tons of ways you can do this, an impact implementation matrix, if you've seen those. Right? So we're going to judge these ideas based on their impact versus how hard they are to implement. If you're going to do that, just know that this does take a lot more time. This is a bit of a grind. And so the juice has got to be worth the squeeze on this one. Okay? Cool. Actually, we've talked about that already. We talked about that already. Amazing. The only other thing that I wanted to share with you, and you can snap pictures of this on the way out. So the other big part of red teaming is awareness of one's own cognitive biases and heuristics. Okay? Let's do just a quick example of heuristics, and please steal this one. I love this one. I'm going to give you all a math problem. Okay? It's coming. Here it is. It's arithmetic. You'll be fine. What is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10? What is 1? No, I'm not. What is 1 plus 19? All right.
No,
anybody else got an answer?
55.
55? Anybody else? You have more than 1 second, Jeremy. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. 50? Okay. 55? Anybody else? This will be like competing answers here? 55? Okay. 55? 60? Okay. I'll give you just another second. 56. Okay, so the correct answer is 55, but I don't care. What I care about is how you got there. How did you do that math problem?
I wrote down the numbers.
You wrote, how did you do it?
I was typing, so I just wrote them down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and then I just did add.
You used like your computer to help you out. Okay, who else? What else did you do?
Backwards, start from 10, 19, 27.
You added backwards. Okay, what else did you do?
I was doing 10 plus 1,
Ooh, say again?
I was doing 10 plus 1 and 9 plus 2.
Yeah, so you combine 10. That's the most common way to do it. What else? What else? You also combine 10. Same thing. Anybody do something different?
Oh
yeah.
my God.
You waited for somebody else to say the right answer and you shouted. Okay, that's also valid. Those are, you did it another way.
1 plus 2 plus 3.
You added from the top up, or from the bottom up. Those are heuristics. Heuristics are people's unique approaches to problem solving. And you just saw 7 different ways of approaching the same problem. Okay? So the need to be aware of one's own cognitive biases and heuristics is critically important to applied decision making, because these are the things that we need in order to streamline our life. If it weren't for your biases, if it weren't for your heuristics, you would never be able to decide what you wanted for breakfast in the morning. You need mental shortcuts to be able to function. But you also need to have some awareness of it. Okay? So interestingly, all of these were printed up from Reddit. You know, it's kind of cool. There's one on cognitive biases, there's one on logical fallacies. You're welcome to shoot some photos of these on your way out. Thank you very much for your time. I can hang around for some questions if you'd like to hang around for a minute. Okay?
And so what did you say we need to do in order to get a copy of?
That's where Claire comes in.